Hello all, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today video we are going to discuss about Terraform authentication for the AWS providers. So basically if you want to create any resources on the AWS, then first thing is Terraform should authenticate to the AWS. Then only it can create any of the resources on that particular providers. So that's what we are going to discuss today. So basically what is provider here? So a provider in Terraform is a plugin that enables interaction with an API. This includes cloud provider and software as a service providers. The providers are specific in Terraform configuration code. They tell Terraform which service it needs to interact with. So Terraform provider is nothing, just it's kind of a plugin. Like it could, if you are creating resource for AWS, then it will download the plugin for AWS providers. If you are creating resources for Azure, then it will download the Azure provider plugin. Then only it can interact with the any of the cloud services where basically you want to provision or create any of the resources. So there are few methods basically which we can use, or we can call options. There are few options which we can use to authenticate from Terraform to AWS providers. So first one is we have parameters in the provider configuration file. So when we write a configuration file, then provider block we can specify the parameters like secret key, access keys, reasons, those things we will pass it. Next we have environment variable, so system environment basically you can use. Next we have shared credential files and shared configuration files, those also we can use to authenticate to AWS. Next we have container credentials, and finally we have instance profile credentials and regions. So I'm not going to cover all of six basically here, so I'm going to cover top four: parameters in the provider configuration, environment variables, shared credentials files, shared configurations files. So those four basically we are going to cover in this video. So parameters in the provider configuration. To specify parameter in the provider configuration, we can set an access key and secret key as follows. A note, this is not recommended if your secrets are hard-coded into good configuration files and committed to source control, they may be compromised. So you have to remember, if you are using parameters in your provider configuration files, then it should not check in the source control, otherwise it can be compromised. So basically in this particular image you can see this is a provider block where we have provider name AWS. Then these are the keys basically which we have specified, like region, access key, secret key. So with these configurations basically Terraform will authenticate to AWS. We will see in demo. Next we have environment variables. So to use environment variables option to authenticate, credentials can be provided by using the AWS access key ID, AWS secret access key, and optionally AWS session token environment variable. So this one is optional, and the region can be set using the AWS underscore region or AWS underscore default underscore region environment variables. So this is the similar things basically when you want to create any environment variable in your local system. Then what you do basically, you go to system properties. From there basically you create a environment variables. So we will see in demo how we will do these things. So in this case the provider configuration option block would be empty if you are using environmental variables. In that case provider configuration option block would be empty. So as you can see in this particular image, in provider plugin we have AWS provider name, and this particular block is empty. If I'll go back to my previous slides, here we have the keys, secret key, access key, and regions. But here we have not specifying because those details will be saved in the environment variables. So it will not be visible in your configuration files. Next we have shared configurations and credential files. So the AWS provider can source credentials and other settings from the shared configuration and credential files. So basically if you have to create the shared configuration and credential file, first you have to install the AWS CLI in your local machines, and you have to run AWS configure command. So as soon as you run this AWS configure command, again you have to provide an access key ID, secret access key ID, default reason name, and default output format, which is optional. So these details anyhow you have to pass when you create when you use basically a shared configuration and credential files. So this is the basically provider block. If you see here, we have shared config files. So this is the location of config files. So by default it will be users, the user's name, .aws and config. So both the files we will find under .aws folder of the user profile, and user profile could be a default or it will be custom also. So when you create when you run the AWS configure command, that time you can choose like whatever the profile you have in your system, so that will you can put it here. Like for me, like it's a default, so I put it as a default. If you have any with any name like Shubham profile, any with the any custom names, you can provide that thing here basically. Now the important thing, how we will get this access keys, secret access keys, all these details, from where we will get it. So for that basically you have to create a AWS account first, and on the AWS account you have to create a IAM role. When as soon as you create a IAM role, then you can see these secret keys and access keys. So we will see in demo how we have to create IAM user and how we will get these access ID key and secret ID key. So those things we will see in a demo. So let's move to demo. So I'm in my AWS console. So first thing what we need to do, we need to create a IAM user so we can get access key and secret key. So I'll go to my IAM user. If you can't find IAM, you can simply search here IAM, so you will get it. So now what we have to do, we have to create a users first. So I'm already having two users, demo users and test users. So I'll create another users called Terraform, and I'll hit on next. Now we will choose a group, because this particular user should have access. So for this particular demo I have added administrator access for this particular group. So what I will do, I'll add Terraform user to my group. Next we will create users. So now users has been created. Now what we have to do, we have to generate the credentials like access ID and secret ID, because this particular user doesn't have any access keys or secret keys. So we will go down, we'll go to security credentials. Okay, so here basically what we will do, we will create a access key. So I'll click on here. So it's asking for what purpose you want for this user. So like you plan to use this access key to enable the AWS CLI to access your AWS accounts. So I'm going to choose by default one, but as per your requirement you can choose these options. And I'll click here, I understand the terms and conditions, and I'll hit on create access key. So now you can see I'll get, okay, just give me a minute, this is coming for test users. So I'll go back to my Terraform user, and here I will go to security credentials. So now here I don't have any access key because currently we have created a user called Terraform. So for this user basically we have to generate the access key and secret key. So I'll create access key and I'll choose the first option, command line interface, and I'll check this one also and hit on next, create access key. So you get access keys and secret key. So you should note these values somewhere, because this is going to, if you forget, you cannot see secret access key. If you again relog in, like if you again open this particular user, so we will see we cannot see the secret access key again, but you can generate the new one also. So I'll copy the access key and I'll put it somewhere in the notepad. So this is our access key and this is our secret key. So this is our access key, this is our secret key, because those keys we are going to use in our configuration when we will create a resource or from the Terraform to AWS. So this part is completed. Now next thing, so I have already created a file called AWS authentication.tf file. So what is doing, so first we will run this particular configuration, because here we are using the using parameters. Then we will commit this particular block and we will see using environment variables. Then finally we will see using shared configuration and credential files. So first thing what I need to do here, we need to change the access key. So I'll choose my newly created access key. So I'll replace this one and I'll copy my secret key. Now the important part, region. So region you have to choose. So if I'll go back to my console home, so currently there are multiple regions. So I am on my AP South 1 region. So I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code editor and here I already have AP South 1. So these particular blocks are commented. So when we do the initialization, this particular block will be used. So I'll save it and I'll open the terminal. So here basically in resource block we are going to create a EC2 instance and this is the AMI ID. So this AMI ID should be based on the region what you have chosen here, because this AMI ID will be different according to a region. Like whatever the region you choose, similarly you have to check this particular AMI ID will belong to that particular region or not. So those things you have to keep in mind. And next we have instance types. So I'm going to use instance t2.small because it's a free. Next we have a tags. So this particular instance will be launched with the name of dev ec2. So first thing what we have to do, we have to run the Terraform init command. Okay, spelling mistake. So what is this init command? It will check this configurations, like we are using provider blocks. So by default, sorry, in backend what it's going to do, it's downloading the provider plugin for this particular resource, like for AWS. So it's going to download the plugins. If you see this .terraform directory is created, if I'll expand this, it's executing. Will wait for a minute to complete this initialization process. So now you can see Terraform has been successfully initialized. So what it does basically, it's basically downloaded the required plugins to run this particular provider, to use this particular provider. So if I'll go back to this particular folder, so I'll go to my desktop. So I have a folder called Terraform. So this particular directory is created .terraform. Now you can see here providers. This is the Terraform registry URL, HashiCorp. Now this is the AWS plugin which is downloaded here. So this is the plugin which will basically interact with the API. Now next thing what we have to do, I'll just run CLS. So next command is Terraform plan. So it will give us a plan like, okay, the Terraform, okay, spelling mistake. So basically a Terraform plan will give us what it's going to do with this particular configuration file. So you can see here plan 1 to add, because we have already we have added only one resource block here to create the AWS instance type. So if I'll go above, so you can see instance type, it's going to tell it t2.small, and this is the AMI ID which we have specified. So these all the things will be created once we run the Terraform apply, because we have not passed these arguments, these values basically. So I'll hit on CLS. Now what I will do, Terraform apply. Now it will go ahead and create the resources. So it's asking for confirmation. I'll put yes. Now you can see AWS instance.myec2, it's creating the instance. So basically my EC2 here is the local name for to identify this particular resource block, and the name of the instance will be created with the help of tags. So if I'll go back to my AWS console and I'll go to EC2, and I'll go to instances. So now you can see it's created the instance with the name of dev EC2. So we have seen how to use parameters to authenticate Terraform with AWS. Now what I will do, I will comment this particular lines. So before that, okay, so anyways we have defined different tags name, like for this particular using parameter we have instance which will be created with the name of dev EC2. For this we have test EC2, and then we have prod EC2. So now what I will do, I'll comment this particular line. Now I will uncomment environment variable 1, and I'll save it. So but before that, what we have to do, because in provider block we have not specified any of the configurations, so in the environment variable we have to pass these values. So I'll go to my system properties, I'll go to advanced system settings, environment variables. Now here I'll create a new variables. So the variable name, so those variable names we will see take it from the Terraform website itself. So I'll go to Terraform sites. Now environment variables. So these are the environment variables which we have to specify. So first we have AWS key ID. So I'll go back here. Now we will copy the value. Access key, we have this one. Okay, I'll create new environment variable. Next we have to create AWS secret access key, and I'll copy the value of this one. And finally we have AWS underscore region. And this value I'll take it from here because we are going to create a resource in AP South 1 region. So I'll save it. Now if I'll go open my terminal. So now I'll run Terraform apply. So we got error. Configuration Terraform AWS Provider, no valid credential source for Terraform AWS Provider found. So this is happening why? Because we have created the environment variables and we have to relaunch this Visual Studio Code Editor. Then only it will reflect. It will take the changes what we have created for environment variables. So what I will do, I'll close the VS Editor and I'll reopen it. Okay, I'll clear the screen. Now again I will run Terraform apply. So now you can see it start getting the instance and is asking for the confirmation and put it yes. So this is the basically issue with Windows. So if you basically create any environment variables and to reflect those variables in your command line, you have to relaunch it. So it's completed. So if I'll go back to my EC2 instance and I'll refresh it. So now you can see the test EC2 instance is created. Now we will see with using the shared configuration and credential files. So what I will do, I'll comment this particular block. Okay, now I'll uncomment this one. So now we will see using shared configuration and credential files. So for this, first thing what we have to do, we have to install the AWS CLI on your local machines. So I have already installed the AWS CLI. So this particular configuration files we need it. So if I'll go to this particular location, see users Shubham, we don't have any folder which is called .aws. So now what I will do, I'll open my command prompt. Now I will run AWS configure. So it's asking for AWS access key ID. So I'll put my access key ID. Next, it's asking for AWS access secret key. Now it's asking for default region. So I'll choose AP South 1. Okay. Default output format, I'll leave it as it is. Sorry, like I will not specify any values. So it's completed. Now if I'll go back to my folder, now you can see .aws folder is created. If I'll go inside this folder, so now we have two files, config and credentials. So in config files, basically we will be having the regions. If I'll edit this file, so default region AP South 1, and if I'll edit credential file here, so here we have access key ID and secret access key IDs. So now what we will do, we will open the terminal and I'll run Terraform apply, and I will do auto approve. So it will not ask for to enter yes. So you can see apply completed, resource 0, added 1, changed 0, destroyed 0. So I'll go back to my console. So now we have an instance called prod ec2. If I'll go back to my this configuration, so here we have tag name is prod ec2. So that's how basically we use AWS authentication for to connect to AWS to create the resources. So now what I will do, I'll uncomment all these things. And I'll save it. Now I'll go back and create new terminal. So then Terraform plan. So now you can see a duplicate provider configuration found. So we cannot run it all the resources because if you see the provider block, we have same providers but with different configuration. So to avoid these issues, we can use alias, but that is next topic which we will cover in coming videos. So I just want to show you, if you will not comment all these things, then in that case Terraform will not create any resources for you because it will give you a duplicate provider configurations. So that's why if you see when we have uncommented these two blocks and we have run it final one, then it only replaced with this prod ec2 with test ec2. So that's all for today. See you in next video. Thank you so much.